Hi, everybody. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Helaine,
Welcome to Step Into Next.
where we move together from what was to what's next.
And with that intro, you might have noticed something a little bit different today, which is we are not in our gorgeous studio in the heart of Chelsea in New York City with our amazing producers. We are at our individual homes in different places. And we're playing around with a new format here for our little summer soiree, as we like to call it, or at least as
Yeah,
I like to call it.
a little summer season.
Yeah.
I'm anywhere you want me to be. I got to be honest. I'm loving this journey that we're on. And it's exciting because it gives us an opportunity to bring on guests that we weren't otherwise able to do, just given the in person. So I am really excited to welcome MK onto the podcast today. We worked together for over 2 years, I think, had a blast. And now that we are both on new adventures, felt like the perfect time to welcome them onto the pod. Welcome, MK.
Y'all, welcome to this state of change. Like, it's so exciting to see you both trying new things, doing new things. So, thank you for letting me be in the mix.
Well, you're our guru, so thanks for guiding us on this remote journey into the ether. And both of you, it's kind of perfect that we're meeting right now. Step into Next, as we've been talking about for 15 episodes. This is episode 16, even if it's our little interim summer episode. We've had 15 episodes under our belt, and every discussion was some variation of the time in between one thing to the next, the liminal space. We definitely talked a lot about surrendering, which I want us all to talk about today, because MK, I think you're going to have a whole lot to share. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are at right now in this great season of life when it comes to
Yeah.
anything you want to share?
I'm thrilled. As most folks will know, give me a mic and I'll be here and I'll happily fill any airtime you give
You
me.
got a beautiful mic over there, MK. I got to be honest. I'm feeling
Oh,
here on the
We'll get
microphones.
you hooked up with your mobile recording studio. You both sound and look great, so don't stress. You don't need to get all fancy. But also episode 16. Did I hear you say that? This is episode 16.
yep.
16's my number. Like, talk about
Same
fate,
one.
talk about kismet. I know. 16's my number. It's my number for all sports, for everything. It's a really important number. So, like, talk about surrender. Like, this all kind of happens spontaneously, just kind of going with the flow. So yeah, little nudges like that. If you're in a state of surrender right now, just keep your eyes out for little, I don't know, serendipitous, yeah,
Synchronicities.
signs, no, synchronicities, yeah, that just are just little winks from the universe to be like, you're on the right path. So I can kind of give you a clue into like what path I'm on. I'm on a state of fun surrender right now. I, at the beginning of the year, made a pivot in my career working in corporate gifting for a while, working in technology pretty much for the vast majority of my career, and made a pivot into, you guessed it, how many minutes, less than 5 minutes into the podcast, AI. We went less than 5 minutes, yeah. So I made a pivot into AI. And joined an organization whose charter it was to validate a couple of different business models for our parent company or benefactor company, if you will. I don't know if I can drop names, but that company, HubSpot, publicly traded organization, a global traded organization, multi-billion-dollar organization, needed a smaller, more nimble organization to go validate and invalidate a couple of business models in the market in the day and age of AI. And so it started in January, and at the beginning of this month in June, so for those who are counting, 6 months, it took for us to validate product market fit, build 3 million user base. Like, that's how many users we got in such a short period of time. And our benefactor company, our parent company, decided, yeah, this is enough validation for us. We'd like to acquire your IP and use that IP to take our product to the next level.
Yeah.
And so that left many of us wondering what's going to happen. And the organization was like, great, we really just want the tech. We don't need the people. This was not an aqua hire type of a situation. And so, all is fair in love and AI. And there's many people right now who are facing a moment of transition in the face of AI. And so I'm amongst those of you who are watching as organizations are changing who they are and who they're working with to help them grow. And now I'm finding myself looking for my next career opportunity. I think it's actually going to be my next career storyline after doing some surrendering to the moment. And of course, to add insult to injury, the week that we found out that, we're um, changing organizational strategies, I lost my dog, my soul dog. So, yeah. So, yeah, talk about surrender.
Okay. What a time,
Okay.
my
Yeah.
Oh,
friends.
yeah.
You
Um,
know, can I ask a question of both of you that I'm really curious about right now? AI, and I want to talk about all of us personally, certainly want to talk, I'll talk about surrender all day long. But when it comes to AI, you know, I see, I guess, in my algorithm among friends, among people, just such a wide range of embracing it or not, hating it or not, using it or not. And I guess I'm just curious your take on A, how you respond to people, if you have any in your life that are just vehemently anti AI, because there are a lot of people like that for environmental reasons, for IP and creative reasons. Um, how you respond to that when we all, I think, have to understand that AI is here to stay for better or for worse, and maybe for worse in a lot of ways. So I'm just curious if you don't mind
yeah.
answering that.
I'm happy to go first on this one. I feel like actually MK might have a slightly more diverse answer than mine. I mean, honestly, I have very few people in my life. I have a couple of friends who are lawyers who are just like probably not embraced it in the same way, likely because their jobs are not as like conducive to leveraging them 24/7. For me, I have less people in my feed concerned about environmental, although I am watching it. I do think it's important to pay attention to obviously all of the side effects of it. I am obsessed with it. And as a solopreneur, it is the most game changing thing that I've experienced in my career. And it has unlocked so much creativity for me that I kind of can't get enough. And sometimes I'm moving so quickly with AI as a solopreneur that I need to take a break to let my human brain catch up to everything that AI is helping support me do or helping me do. And it is amazing. I'm trying to do it all. Like I'm trying to do photos, I'm trying to do videos, I'm trying to try every single platform to see which one I like best. I think it's fun to think about being at the cutting edge, and there's more places that I want to keep playing. And given where again, I don't know where I'm going professionally necessarily, but as a solopreneur, this changes the game entirely. And so for me, I'm all in, not because I don't think that there are negative effects of it, but I think to be able to be effective, smart, and to be inspiring to other people who might not know where to go with it, it's best for me to just become an expert in every which way. And yes, my grandma's downloaded Claude and she's using it all the time.
Yeah, I can totally, but I use it all the time too. I think for the solopreneur or small teams or whatever, your time efficiency and profitability is so greatly increased by AI. And then, I always think of the adage my mom said to me, like the more well you do personally, the more good you can do in the world. So it's not really like offsetting some of the damage, again, environmentally that I see with AI, but I think that there's room for a lot of it. But MK, I'm dying to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think my feed is a little bit of both the like AI anarchists and
Yeah.
the AI, I don't know, promoters out there. Of the anarchists that are out there that I'm talking with, they're using their contrarian take to kind of just build a follower base. But I know that
Mm,
they're like behind the scenes, I know that they're using AI quite a bit.
interesting.
When I encounter folks though that talk about the environmental impact, I always challenge them to like think about every ounce of their life that's actually part of a food system, a water system, like clothing. The clothing industry is the single biggest waster of natural resources out there. I think first only to the meat industry, the
What
bovine
about
industry
almonds? I think
specifically,
almonds are
and
actually up there pretty
almonds.
high too.
Almonds are terrible.
Yikes.
Yep.
It's bad. And so you can't address the sustainability size or the environmental side of AI until you address the entire system in which AI exists. And it does not actually compare to the vast majority of the systems that we're reliant on as consumers here, especially in the US. So that's one thing that I think about. And I also challenge folks, especially folks who are on the cutting edge of this. They're early adopters, and as an early adopter, you have an important say as a consumer in the behaviors that you choose to use and leverage to try to combat the systems that you have. So if you get in and you get in early, you have a voice in how you're going to shape and define the system. So that, not unlike how your mom said, Leanne, so that your privilege in this moment uplifts others that do not have access to this resource or aren't quite there and part of it. And we saw how AI hallucinated, and how it was predominantly started initially around a cis white het men's like mentality, and how it has like its own versions of racism and discrimination, but that's because it was built within a brain trust that didn't bring in diversity of thought or opinion. So yeah, so I could go on that whole diatribe to folks.
I thought it was helpful because we do have an interesting array of listeners, and I think that it is a conversation people are having right now, regardless of their point of view on the spectrum. So I think I like to hear your
Can I
perspective.
ask a question too? I think kind of maybe bringing it back to the theme of the podcast, which is all is fair in love and AI. One of the things that I am finding fascinating, and I think we talked about it a little bit as you're starting to touch on the fact that SaaS is transitioning so aggressively. And, I don't want to kind of get into that whole piece of it, but I do think that it is forcing everything to move a lot faster. And you saw that right now firsthand when you were like, we proved product market fit within 6 months, which is kind of crazy. And as we are all kind of in this transition and yet also balancing the fact that with AI, a lot of things, whether they're tech enabled or tech forward, are able to move a lot faster. Like, curious how you think about that in terms of your next career move, knowing that things are just moving at a much faster pace in every industry.
Well, so I would temper some of the speed with orienting ourselves to all of the other industries that have not become AI fluent. We happen to sit at a crossroads of privilege, quite frankly, just because we're in and around technology. We use technology daily. We are the 1% of AI right now, where we are using this in a way that so many other industries, so many other systems around us are just not using this. So it's very easy to think in your own mind, like, I'm behind, or like, oh, everybody's doing this. And it just so happens that not everybody's doing it. We just happen to sit in a world where this is an important part of how the lifeblood of how that world advances. So as I think about the opportunity for me now, I'm actually exploring industries that feed my values, feed a value system that's really important to me, that is actually very slow or latent to the adoption of technology, that could catapult the impact and compound the impact that it has on not just my values, but also the values of the society I think is really important to me. So classically underfunded, under technologicalized, that's not a word. I know, Leanne, you'll correct, you'll edit me on that one. Is nonprofits. The space of
yes,
yeah,
yes.
Nonprofits, and again, they go through the moral dilemma, of like AI, not AI, and but I think if you can help shepherd that moral dilemma with them and for them, there's a huge opportunity for them to actually bypass the growth curve that so many other industries have gone through with SaaS transformation. They can just skip that whole doodad widgets and feature, parity, and just go straight to AI and streamlining processes and continuing to compound their operational efficiency and thus obviously their economic efficiency from within an organization.
And I'll even add to that, I couldn't agree more. I have a lot of nonprofit clients, actually. They keep coming to me because I see it as a startup. I see working with them, and AI it changes the game for things like grant writing and a million other things. I couldn't agree more. Also, I would add for-profit companies, Helaine, like the move, things are moving so fast, so impact can move as fast. Like that your reach, your if you want to do good things as an actual for-profit company, that too can accelerate. So I get excited about stuff like that, where it's like if AI helps us move fast and break shit or whatever that phrase was
Yeah.
from.
I think for me, as someone who's like, in this liminal space, I am fully, trying every day to both surrender and also as the driver in me, like, where's the balance of those things? Like, AI just, it helps. Like, it really helps me, like, pressure test things really quickly. Like I started a newsletter almost 3 months ago, and I would not be able to do that in the same way if AI wasn't able to support me. Same thing with writing a Substack. I do the writing on my own, but like being able to like talk to text and all those things, like it is allowing me to pressure test that and a few other things, and really, I don't know, really fuels my creativity even outside of the productivity. And I think that the creativity aspect of it is one that I don't hear about as much, but I actually am excited to like hopefully maybe help people think about in the future, even people that are a little bit younger, that a sparring partner, right? Like I call Claude my sparring partner, and like I think that that is a really interesting use case that actually fires the neurons and helps people like really grow in a way that like we don't talk about enough. We talk about systems and processes and efficiencies and all those things, but like what about having someone that you can always spitball ideas with? It's kind of crazy and scary, and I don't want to replace humans, and at the same time, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this to all of us then too. This is a little bit, we talked briefly about the idea of surrender, which has shown up in our podcast a lot with our different guests. I, there's something inside of me that wants to ask, okay, things are moving so quickly, and yet there's also this movement toward kind of moving away from hustle culture, moving away from constant churning. And I don't think those two things are at odds exactly. But curious to know from both of you as we sit here now, MK, you start. First of all, what does surrender in this moment in this life mean to you right now? Because it can mean a million different things and it changes for me sometimes. And Helaine, you too, and I'll answer as well. And then how do we fit that in to like slowing down a little bit and surrendering and, not embracing the crazy breakneck speed of hustle?
Yeah. So for me, in this moment in time where I get to slow down, it's actually reconnecting what's been severed from me between the mind and the body. This is like the woo-woo section, so you guys can like
Not that
tune
way.
out,
Keep
tune
going.
in, whatever,
It's
like
amazing.
whoever your
Yeah.
listeners, right? And so because we had worked in such an intense, such a fast-paced environment for 6 months, we were constantly trying and churning and burning through ideas, concepts, prototypes. I found myself as physical as I am. I'm constantly in the gym. I play a ton of sports. I found myself actually getting back into a space that I'd worked so hard to get myself out of, which is the dissection of my mental and my physical. I was finding myself with some physiological symptoms of burnout. And it wasn't sustainable, quite frankly. And so, what I'm spending time reflecting on right now is how do I, because there are going to be times in your life, right, where you are going to be pushed to the physiological limit, right? It's just life. How do I dial into this state where I can reconnect with the signs, the symptoms of that disconnection of the mind and the body? And how can I then come back into, okay, how do I re-regulate this? How do I actually, do I have a choice here to rewire a system that's not working for me? And if it's not working for me, in my position as an executive, is it not working for others? How do we dismantle that? How do we challenge the notion of what exists there? And so I'm finding myself actually spending more time being quiet and reflective and contemplative and following the natural rhythms and circadian processes of my own life to say, oh, that sounds interesting. I actually feel an emotional pull there. Like I felt like excitement kind of bubble up. Maybe I should follow that, see what happens there. which I think is going to be of the most important survival skill of this next phase of our evolution with AI, because it's so easy to just plug in and disconnect on the emotional front. It's actually, I mean, many folks are going to talk about how AI is going to run out of new ideas very quickly. We're already forecasting that in the next 2 to 3 years, LLMs are not going to provide much more value to our lives as they stand today, because no net new creativity is being fed into it. So, all the creatives listening here, job security is very much on the horizon for you, because you are the 0 to 1 population. You're going to take these ideas that never existed before, and the convenience, the efficiency of AI that exists to help folks get things from 1 to 10 is going to require the 0 to 1 space. So
Yeah.
lean
Really
into that, spend
interesting.
more time exploring that, and hone that skill in, because it's going to be one of the most coveted skills, especially in my role in growth and in marketing. Creatives and brand is going to be the single biggest differentiator for companies now that everybody has the same access to data and systems through LLMs and through AI. That's your differentiation from here. So yeah, so that's where I'm spending time thinking and feeling and finding my creative source, the things that differentiate me and differentiate the skills I can bring into the marketplace.
I love that. And I love that you, in part, came to this through some quiet and through some surrender. And I think, kind of back to the earlier part of what you were sharing, I think I can very much share in that feeling post City Row, where for 10 years, feel like in retrospect, especially, like I was pushing a boulder up a hill for a decade. And I've been in this kind of similar mode of like connecting mind body, actually just like, yes, surrendering at times. I struggle with it, but I remind myself every day to try and do a little bit more of it. Because when you are in flow, and I've seen it for myself, I've seen it for others. You hear it when people are like, lightning in a bottle, or, it's flowing, right? Like I have made a conscious decision that whatever I build next will be 100% in flow. I am not pushing anything. It has to flow incredibly downhill, downstream very quickly. And it's been a whole different lens for me in terms of like how I approach where to put my energy and my time, because I'm a driver. I could fit a square peg in a round hole every single day. Probably quite well, and you might not know the
You
difference. Like that's how
definitely can.
Yeah.
insane
But
I am. And
so many of us are square pegs in round holes, and so
yeah,
few of us have actually understood what it feels like to be that square peg in a square hole.
yeah.
So that flow state, like you have to dial into the physiological response to being in that flow state.
And
Otherwise,
it's
so many of
rare.
us, it's
it's
so rare,
it's not
so
part of our
rare.
culture in so many
No.
ways. And so that's definitely been a lens to which I'm looking at this phase for me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this feels in flow, and then it becomes out of flow. That's actually been some of the harder pieces of this surrender experiment for me, is when something initially feels like it's totally a surrender, it's just happening, and then like it phases out, and I'm like, oh, that's confusing. Like that felt really in flow, that felt like the right thing, that felt like something I've been manifesting, and now it's not coming to fruition, and like kind of reminding myself that, oh no, like we are just here, and we have to let it go, and something else like even more incredible is probably around the corner. And those are the things that I like try and remind myself of every day as I've been in this, you know, dare I say, liminal space for over 2 years. I would say like probably closer to three. Ever since we decided to sell City Row, I've been able to like prioritize the body, like figure out what else is going around. And I've had a little bit more time and space. And I think what's hard for me now is that I'm ready for a little bit more hustle. And I intentionally, even I had space, I created more space. And so now I'm like, I actually want more hustle. I don't have enough
Okay,
to
I
balance
have
it.
to add on to that because I think it's really interesting that you're saying this. And you've always been a hustler. Like, I think that that is in your blood. Like, I really do think that. But I also think surrender, at least from my perspective, I think we all sort of agree with this, is action oriented. It's
Mhm.
not necessary, it's going with the flow in terms of alignment. But I've figured it out from my perspective where surrender for me is starting, and you're all saying versions of this, but from a regulated nervous system is where I'm really working on that, like trying not to get activated, staying at this place where I'm pretty chill and calm, and then taking action from there. And that is a game changer, I think, because if you take action from a desperation or a something prove, I need something to prove, or I need to keep up with someone, that just never works. And that's what you're talking about, Helaine, with like the alignment piece, I think. And I also think it's really fascinating that I've discovered lately that surrender for me, I don't know if these two ideas are at odds, but it means I'm allowed to change my mind. That I can say, I made this decision, and kind of, Helaine, like you just said, it's not working out for whatever reason. It does not feel aligned anymore. So I'm going to change my mind. And MK, will you talk about what you said before when we talked a little bit at the beginning about that idea, and you talked about the privilege in that, and I loved what you said, and I think our audience would love it too. So I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, first, so I've been sitting here reflecting and looking at motivating factors. But I can get real textbook and real nerdy here because Leanne and I spent some time actually working on some thought leadership of my own. And the self-determination theory, if you don't know this, is a form of understanding the essence from which you create or build something. And it really is actually your most truest expression of your authenticity. So the self-determination theory talks about the source energy from which you are motivated. So are you extrinsically motivated or are you intrinsically motivated? And on that spectrum, and we fall for any one decision, for any one moment in time, for any one stage of life, we are sourcing our energy from any one of those two perspectives. And more likely it's somewhere on a spectrum here. So when we're really young, we're very extrinsically motivated. Our parents are shaping us. Society is shaping us. Gender conformity is shaping us. Socioeconomic standards are shaping us. The education systems through which we come through are shaping us. And we reach, like our 20s or so, and we start to realize, whoa, I have a choice here. I can choose to change and rewire my brain. I can choose to change the way I reorient myself to, my race, my gender, my ethnicity. I can choose how I want to show up in this world. And so you start to oscillate a little bit more towards that intrinsic expression of the self. But what I find really interesting is those two energy sources, the extrinsic versus the intrinsic, is what we're talking about now, about what is driving us, like moving us along. And Helaine, to your point about like hustle, you're very intrinsically motivated when you get to the state of hustle. But it might actually be something you could deconstruct and be like, wait a minute, am I intrinsically motivated by hustle? Or is that an extrinsic thing that society has told me that I do need to hustle? And knowing you for as long as I have, I'm pretty sure it's intrinsic. It's like part of your DNA. You came out of the womb ready to charge. But some folks listening to this might think that they need to feed into the system that is built around hustle culture. So all this to say, when you're in that state of your most, what we call inner resonance, you start to find that inner resonance and use that to get to yourself to a state of your most truest authenticity.
Yeah.
But we exist in a time and a place, in a socioeconomic bracket, in an educational system, and where we actually have the privilege to sit and think and contemplate about these big things. We have this privilege where we could change our career. We could change our geographic location. We could change the way that we show up in this world, because we're not in a state of fight or flight where we're just trying to exist in the moment for the moment. And so it's worth reorienting yourself to what I would consider that to be more of an abundance mindset, rather than what I think is more commonly referred to as like the scarcity mindset, to be like, oh, I don't have, I don't feel, I don't, the don't mentality will extract a lot from you, so that you're not sourcing your motivation from a place of gratitude and abundance.
And
May
to
I
that
follow
point,
up on that? Oh, go ahead, Helaine. You go
yeah, no,
first.
to that point, I talked about this a little bit, but like this is also a relatively new thing that we've added into our matrix of life, right? We haven't always had the opportunity to make these changes so last minute, so easily. I just like up and left and went to Texas. What? You know what I mean? And like we all have examples of things like that. And I think, I think the phrase abundance to me is like a really beautiful place to like sit on for a little while, and just like as we wrap things up today, like MK and Leanne, you too, like where are you guys, like, how do you think about abundance in the liminal space? Like, what are the things that you tell yourself when maybe you're kind of out of abundance or out of surrender? Like, what are the things that you tell yourself to kind of get back into that state that maybe people would want to hear?
Can I go first because it piggybacks on what MK said? And
Yes, you can go first.
thank you. Thank you calling me. MK, you were just talking about a little bit of the privilege inherent in being able to make these choices, but you explained it much more and with much more nuance and beauty. I would argue one of the most pivotal books I've ever read in my life is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And even in this is a very, very boiled down version, but his thesis at the end of his experience in Auschwitz, one of the worst places on earth for anyone, was still that in those circumstances, you have a choice. And that choice is your perspective. So you can choose to essentially live, or you can choose to essentially die, even though you're still technically living. So I would just argue, and this goes right to what you're saying, Helaine, my version of abundance is knowing that at any moment I can change my perspective and see something better, or at least see a growth opportunity or an opportunity in the, and I'm not likening any of my experiences to anything Viktor Frankl went through, so I want to make that very clear. But even in the worst things that could have happened to me or have happened to me, I have a choice in those moments, and that's where I find the abundance.
I love that framing. I feel very similarly, right? Like, you always have two lenses through which you can view the world and view any moment in time that you're in. In this moment in time where I'm, looking and I'm like, oh, it's never been harder to break through an applicant tracking system with a resume, and you got to keyword stuff, and I could sit here in the negative and dwell on all the ways I'm not going to get something, or I could just like answer a text that a friend said, hey, can you help us with something? Right? And then like suddenly I'm on their podcast and we're talking about the most fulfilling, enriching things that I could think about talking about on a Monday morning, to start my week. And it's really just, how do I look for the gifts in any hidden moment? How do I just pause for a moment and drop into that gratitude mentality? And I think abundance starts with being grateful and really dwelling and existing in a state of gratitude for a bit. And then you start to realize, oh my gosh, well, actually, this is also getting a little nerdy and technical, but the human brain can only see and register about, I think it's like 92% of the information that's coming at us at any given period of time. So that means 8% of what our field of vision is absorbing at any given time is decided by our brain, right? This is important information. This is not important information. 92% of the information that we're absorbing is not coming into our field of vision at any given time. Can you imagine if you started to give yourself the choice about what falls into that field of vision, that 8%? You could swap out just 4% of that for something more positive, a more positive framing of the world around you. And that will shape 50% of the way that you walk through and navigate life. So you have to start looking for ways to be grateful. Then that more intention, and I love what you're framing earlier, Leanne, too, about it's a state of action. Surrender is a state of action. And this is the most simplistic way that you can take surrender and turn it into action, is to consciously rewire the way that you absorb that 8% of the world, and then turn that into your status for existing and observing the world. And more things you'll turn that 4% into 7%, 8%, and you'll start to view the world from that state of gratitude and abundance.
And
So
what an amazing way to go through life. So I think that's a beautiful place to end today's pod. MK, is what does life look like when you can actually look at it through that lens? Pretty good. Pretty good
Love it
stuff.
so much. This was my favorite conversation. Thank you, MK. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will be back with more updates over the summer from who knows where. We'll see.